So we're moving along at a nice pace, and in the last video we were able to complete our add pet page where we added a new pet, but you can see that we have the component that is rendering called pet card. So this is the one that we want to work on in this video. So therefore what I've done is just opened up my pet card component here, and then we can begin to type away. So this is also going to be a client component, so we're going to mark it as use client, and then we're going to be importing a bunch of stuff. So let me just remove this. So we're going to import the use state hook, use state. We are also going to import the card component, the card from ./ui card, and then card content, and then we're going to import the button from ./ui button. We're going to import the badge, not the badge from Lucid React, the badge from ./ui badge, the actual component. We're going to import the avatar component from ./ui avatar, the avatar fallback, and then the avatar image as well. And then we're going to import some icons here. So import footprint from Lucid React, import the map pane, the calendar, the weight, and the user icon. And then we're going to import use query from Convex React. We're going to import API from Convex generated API. And then we want to import the link component from next link, and then import the image component from next image, and then we can begin to build out our application. So I'm going to say export default function pet card, and remember that pet card takes in a couple of props. If you remember when we were on the dashboard page, then pet card was taking in the pet prop right here as well as the current user ID. And then if you check the profile page as well, just search for pet card inside here, and you'll find that it takes in the pet as well as the current user ID. So those are the two things that we're going to be destructuring inside here. So pet, current user ID, and then we can begin to set up our state values. So we're going to have one state value here. So const image error and set image error. So we're going to be using this state value in case the image fails to load, and so by default it is going to be false. And then we want to get the owner of the pet from Convex. So we're going to have use query here, and we're going to pass in api.users.getUserById, which is a function that we don't have. And oops, don't rename that. And this is going to check for the pet.ownerID, owner ID. And if that is true, then we want to pass in the ID as pet.owner ID, like so. And otherwise, we want to skip the query. And then we want to check if an application has been made for that particular pet. So const application is equal to use query, and then we're going to say api.applications.getApplication by, is it this one? Nope, that's another function. So get application by pet and applicant, that is the function that we want to get. This is going to take in the current user ID as well as check for the pet._ID, and then if they are true, then let's open this up. We're going to pass in the pet ID as pet._ID, and then we're going to pass in the applicant ID as current user ID, which is coming from our props. And then if none of those exist, then we want to skip the query. Next, we are going to create a function here called get button content, and for now I'm just going to leave it as empty, so that when we actually need it, then we're going to create it. And then we're going to create a variable here called button props, and we're going to set this equal to get button content, which is the function above. And then we can now work on our return. So we're going to return a card with a class name here of overflow-hidden, then transition the shadow with a duration of 300, and then on hover we want the shadow to be large, so shadow-large, close that out. And then inside this card we're going to have a div with a class name of relative. Inside this div we're going to have another div with a class name of relative, and then aspect-square, not aspect ratio, so aspect square, and then bg gray-100. And then inside this, then we can map over our pet images. So pet pet.images double ampersand, and then pet.images.length. Length is greater than 0, so checking for both conditions, and there is no image error, which is our state value. So when all those three conditions are true, that's what you want to go ahead and render out the image component from Next.js, and then otherwise we're going to show something else. So let's build up this image. So the image is going to have a source of pet.images and then get the first image. And the reason why we're getting the first image is because the images are being stored in convex in an array, if you remember how we created them. And then the art attribute, in case the image fails to load, we just want to show the name of the pet. And then we want to have this image to have the fill property, and then the class name here of object-cover, and then on error is a prop that you can attach to this image, meaning in case the image fails to load, then what do you want to do? You want to say set image error to true, and depending on this state value, we're going to show some kind of state. Now inside our return, our second else statement, we're going to turn a div here with the class name of flex and size-full, and then item-center, and then justify-center. Inside this div, we're just going to go ahead and show the paw print icon, so print, and then we're going to have a class name of size-16, and then text gray-300, just like that. We can save that, and probably we're going to have an issue because we don't have these two functions, but let's go ahead and check it out in the pet card. Okay, so we do have an error. That's because of convex. So let's just finish building out our UI first of all, and then we are going to work on the convex side. So we're going to go below this. We're going to turn another div with a class name of absolute, and then top-3, and then right-3. Inside this, we're going to show the badge from shardcn. This is going to have a variant which is going to be dependent on the pet.isAvailable. So if that is true, then you want to show the default variant. If it is false, we want to show the secondary variant. And then inside this, we're going to be checking for pet.isAvailable. If that is true, then the text is going to say available. Otherwise, it's going to say not available, just like that. And then we can go below these three divs. And below these three divs, we're going to now show card content. Let's close it out. Card content, okay. Inside card content, we're going to return a div with a class name of space on the y of 3. And then now this is where we're going to be showing the pet information. Inside the pet information, we're going to have a div. Inside this div, we're going to have an h3 with a class name of text-large and text-large and font-semi-bold. And then we're going to say pet.name. Below the h3, we're going to have a paragraph with a class name of text-sm, which is going to say pet.read, and then ampersand mid dot, which is an HTML entity, and then it's going to say pet.type. So basically showing the breed and then a small dot in the middle and then the type of pet. And then we can go below this paragraph, and then below this first div, now we can show some stats about the pet. So therefore we're going to return a div with a class name of flex and items-center, and then space on the x of 4, and then text-sm and text gray-600. Inside this div, we're going to have another div with a class name of flex and items-center and space on the x of 1. And then we're going to show the calendar icon. This is going to have a class name of size-4. Then close it out. Below the calendar icon, we're going to have a span. This span is going to be showing the pet.age, and then it's also going to show the pet.age is triple equal to 1. If that is true, then it's going to say year. Otherwise, it's going to say years. So basically, if it is 1 year old, then it's going to say 1 year old. If it is more than 1, it's going to say 2 years old. So just some playing around with grammar just a bit. And then now we can go below this span, and then below this div, we're going to create another div. And this div is going to have a class name here of flex items-center and then space on the x of 1. Inside this div, we're going to show the weight icon. This is going to have a class name of size-4. And then below this, we can show a span with a class name of capitalize. And then this is going to say the pet.size, just like that. And then we can go below two divs. And then now we can show the location. So here we're going to return a div with a class name of flex and items-center, and then space on the x of 1, and then text-sm and text grade-600. And we don't need this class here actually, because the text is already grade-600 for the paragraphs. Actually, let me confirm. Globals, we had, this is only on the, where is it? This is only on the paragraphs. So it's text grade 900 by default, and then this is on the paragraphs. So I think we do need it here, text grade as 600, because within this, we're going to be showing the map pin icon. And below the map pin icon, we're going to have a span. So the span is now going to take this class name of text grade 600. And we're going to say pet.location. And the mapping is going to have a class name of size-4. So simple as that. And then you can go below this div. Now you can show the owner information. So owner info. And for here, we want to check if the owner exists. And only when the owner exists, that's when you want to have a div here with the class name of flex and items-center, and then space on the x of 2. Close it out, close it out. Why isn't it auto closing? So inside this div, we're going to have the avatar component with a class name of size-6, size-6, close it out. Inside this, we're going to show the avatar image. Spell this correctly. So avatar image, this is going to have a source of owner.profile image. And then below this, we're going to have the avatar fallback. So in case the image fails to load, we want to show the user icon. This is going to have a class name of size-3. And then we can go below the avatar. We're going to have a span with a class name of text-sm and text grade-600. And then this is now going to show the owner.name. So basically the name of the person. And then we're going to go now below this closing parentheses, and we're going to have the description. So just a preview of the description, where we're going to say create a paragraph with the class name of line clamp -3 and text-sm and text grade-600. And actually not now, because it's a paragraph, we don't need this class. So simple as that. And then we're going to say pet.description. Now what line clamp 3 is going to do is that it is going to show 3 lines of the description, and then if the description is more than 3 lines, then it's going to show you an ellipsis. So you don't have to do that in JavaScript, even though it's possible. And then now we can go below this paragraph. Now we can show our action buttons. So here we're going to have a paragraph, a div with a class name of padding top of 2. And then inside here, we're going to say button props, which we created .disabled. If that is true, then we want to show something. If it is false, we want to show something as well. So let's start with the true state right here. If it is true, we want to show the button component. And this button is going to have a class name of width-full. And then it's going to have a variant of button props dot variant. And then the disabled state is going to be true by default. And then inside this button, we want to show the button props.text. Now this is coming from the function above right here, which we have not yet created. But once you create it, then it is going to be easier to understand where these are all coming from. And then now for the else statement here, we want to return a link. This link is going to be going into button props.href. And then it's going to have a class name of block. Now inside this link, we want to go ahead and show the button with the class name of width-full. And then once again, the variant is going to be button props.variant. And then the text is going to say button props.text. Simple as that. Now we can save it. And then let's go ahead and deal with our function right here. So let's create this function before we jump into convex. So the first thing that you want to do inside this is we want to check if there's no application. So if there's no application, then we want to return an object here, and we want to return the text for the button. Therefore, it's going to say adopt me. because there is no application, and then the variant is going to be default for the button, and then the href is going to be going into backticks because it is dynamic, /dashboard / and then $ curly bracket pet._id, because we are going to create this page as well. So if you want to view more details about that particular pet. Now below the if statement, which ends right here, we want to go ahead and create a switch statement, which is going to be dependent on the application.status, where we're going to say in the case that the status is pending, then we are going to return the following. The text for the button is going to say in progress. The variant is going to say secondary, and then the disabled state, disabled, is going to be true. And then next, we want to check for the case that it has been accepted, where we're going to return the following. So basically just something similar to what we have on top. So you can just copy it, paste it here. Now the text for this one is going to say accepted. The variant is going to say default, and then now this is not going to have a disabled state. Instead, it's going to have an href. So the href is going to be dynamic once again, going into the /dashboard /messages page / application, and then link this to the $ application._id, so that when the application status has been accepted, when you click on that button on the pet card, it is going to take you into the messages so that you can begin talks with that particular person. Now next, we want to check for the case of rejected. Let's have a semicolon here. So in the case that it has been rejected, then we want to return the text here that says rejected. We want to return the variant of the button that is destructive to show the red button. And then we want the disabled state to be true as well. And then in the case, we don't have a final case rather, but for the default case, we want to go ahead and return. Let me bring this down. So we want to return the text here that is going to say adopt me. And you know what? It is basically similar to what we have here. So copy this and paste it here. It is going to be much faster. Fantastic. Now we can go ahead and save that, but we're still going to be getting this error on the screen. And this is because we had not created our function, so you can safely ignore this. But now let's go ahead and jump into convex so that we can create our two functions right here. So get user by ID is going to be the first one that we create. So open this up. Let's jump into convex, and then we are in the users, and then we should be with our function to get user by clerk ID. So we can go below this function, and so we can go ahead and say export const get user by ID. This is going to be a query, and it's going to have an argument here of ID coming from v.id from the users table. And then we're going to say that the handler is going to be an asynchronous function taking the context and the arguments, where we're simply going to say return await context.db.get, and you want to get the arguments.id, and that is how we get the user by their ID. So you can save that. That is one function complete. And then the other function that we need is this one. So get application by pet and applicant. So you can copy this because it is a long name. We can go into the applications right here, and then we can go below this. So we're going to say export const and then paste this in. So get application by pet and applicant. This is also going to be a query where we're going to pass in some arguments here. So it's going to be dependent on the pet ID, which is v.id coming from the pets table. And then the applicant ID is v.id coming from the users table. And then our handler function is going to be an asynchronous function taking the context and the arguments, where we're going to say that we want to get all the applications first. So const applications is equal to await context.db.query, and we're querying the adoption applications table with index of by pet. And then we're going to pass in our callback here, where we're going to say query.equals, and we want to check for the pet ID being equal to the arguments dot pet id, which you have as one of our arguments, and then dot collect to get all of them. And then what we want to do is we want to return applications dot find. We want to find one single application, which I'm calling app, and we want to say return the app dot applicant id, which is triple equals to the arguments dot applicant id, and that is how you get the pet by, or that's how you get the application by pet and the applicant. So we can save that, and then now if we control J first of all to make sure that convex is working, you can see that it was giving me an error, but now it's going to rerun everything. And there we go. So it says that applications get application by pet and applicant. So I mentioned this in a previous video that sometimes you can fix the issue, but it's still going to show you the error. So let's ignore that for now, and let's see if our application is working. Let's go ahead and reload this. And there we go. So you can see that this is what we have been building. This is our pet card, and this padding should not be there. Let's go back into pet card. Let's find our card component. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? The card content here. Is it the card content? No, it should be on the card. On the card, let's have a padding all around of 0. See if that is going to fix it. And there we go. So now we don't have that space on the top, but you can see that this is the pet that we created in the last video when we were on the add pet page. So looks very, very nice, very, very nice. You can go ahead and try to add another pet, and if you go into the home page, then you can see that because this is obviously for me, but because I am the one who created that pet, then it is not going to show up in the home page. That is how we set it up. But if I go ahead and log out, so let me just log in with another account. Okay, so I've logged in with another account, and you can see that now this one appears as part of my recommendations, right? And I can even see the person who uploaded it. And then if I click on adopt me, it is going to take me into a page that does not exist because we have not yet created it. So we're going to get a 404 page. And you know what? I'm glad I caught this because I've passed in the wrong route here. So instead of button props, this should go into /dashboard/pets and then the unique ID. And that should be the same right here. So pets and then /. Okay, so we have now successfully built our pet card page, or rather our pet card component. Now I want to just go ahead and build these pages first of all before you can continue with our discover and the rest of the pages, because these ones are the ones that are most likely to be forgotten. So when I click on adopt me, it's going to take me into /pets/ the ID of that particular pet. So that is a page that we want to work on right away. And so how are we going to do that? We're simply going to navigate into our app right here, into the dashboard, and then into the dashboard right here. We're going to create a new file called pets/ and then a $, sorry, not a $, but square brackets. We want to navigate into the ID of that page or of that pet, and then /page.jsx. So that is going to be this page right here. So let's go ahead and mark this file as use client, and then let's just say export default function pet page, and then let's return a div that says pet page, and then save it. Let's just make sure that we have something rendering on the screen. And there we go. So from this page forward, I want to begin to use auto imports, which basically means that I can do something like const router is equal to use router, and then from this drop down I can just select the hook that I want. In this case, I want the one that is coming from next navigation, and when I click on tab or enter, then it's going to auto import it for me. So instead of having to type out all the imports, because these pages are becoming bigger and bigger and the imports are going to be many, so I don't want to spend so much time typing out the imports. So in case you don't have this drop down, then all you can do is, let me remove that. So in case you don't have this drop down, what you need to do is simply go to the end of the word that you want and then control spacebar, and it's going to give you that drop down, and then you can select the one that you want. So in this case, I want the one that is coming from next navigation. So we are now on the pet page, and we're going to do the following. We want to go ahead and get const ID. We want to destructure the ID. In this case, it is this part of the URL right here, because we know that we are on the /dashboard/pets page. So we want to get this unique ID, which is unique for every pet, so that we can get data about that pet. And how do I know that it is called ID? Because in my route right here, I called it ID. So if I were to call it name, then I would destructure it as name. Just take note of that. Now this is going to be equal to use params from next navigation, which is a hook that we have access to, and then get the router. So const router is equal to use router from next navigation once again, because we are working with the app router, and then destructor the user. So user from use user coming from Clark Next.js, and then we can set up our state values. So selected image index, this is going to help us to select particular images for the pets, and then set selected image index. This is going to be equal to use state. By default, we want to select the first image, and we know that arrays are 0 based, so the first image is index number 0. And then const image error, just like we did in the previous component, set image error. This is going to be equal to use state. Use state, by default it is going to be false. Now let's go ahead and get the current user from convex. So const current user is equal to use query from convex react. We're going to pass in API and then also import it from convex dot users dot get user by Clark ID, and then this checks for the user dot ID. If that is true, then you want to pass in the Clark ID as user.id. Otherwise, we want to skip the query. And then const pet is equal to use query once again, pass in api.pets.get pet by ID, which is a function that we don't have. This takes in the ID as the ID that we're getting back from use params. And then const owner is equal to use query once again, pass in api.users.get user by ID, and then this checks for the pet .owner ID. If that is true, then the ID is going to be pet.owner ID. Otherwise, we want to skip the query, just like that. And then next, we want to get the application. So const application is equal to use query, and then pass in api.applications.get. It's a long one. It's the one that we created in the previous video. So get application by pet and applicant. This checks for the current user ._ID, and it also checks for the pet ._ID. Oops. Okay. So if both of them are true, then we're going to pass in the pet ID as pet._ID, and then we're going to pass in the applicant ID. My mouse. So applicant ID as the current user._ID, and then if something fails, then you want to skip the query. And then next, we want to check if there is no pet or there is no current user. Then we simply want to return our loading spinner component, enter to auto import it, and then we want to have a boolean value here. So const is owner, check if you are the owner. Then we want to say pet.owner ID is triple equal to the current user._ID. Then that means that person is the owner of the pet that they are currently viewing. And then const get application status is going to be equal to an arrow function here, where we're going to say if there is no application, then simply return, or rather return null. And then otherwise, we're going to say return application.status, because that means that the application status exists. And then just like we did in the pet card component, we want to go ahead and create a function here called get action button. Now this is going to be the content for the button. Is going to be an arrow function. So we want to check first of all if is owner is true, which I've just created above. Then we want to return, and we're going to be returning a link component here from next link. This is going to have a dynamic href, so curly brackets and then backticks. We want this to go into /dashboard /pets and then / curly brackets pet._id /edit. So we're going to be able to edit details about that pet if you're the owner. Inside this link, we're going to return a button, the button component. Remember to auto import it from components UI button. The class name for this is going to be with-full, and then the text is going to say edit pet details. And then you can go below this. We can say const status is equal to get application status, which is what we've just created right there on top. And then we can say if status, or rather if no status, if that is true, if there is no status, then we're going to return the link. This is going to be going into a dynamic href, so /dashboard /pets / curly brackets pet._id, and then we want to push the user into the adopt page. So that is also another page that we're going to create. And then the button here is going to have a class name of with-full, and then the text is going to say start adoption process, just like that. And then now can go below this. Now we're going to have our switch statement. So we want to switch depending on the status. So we want to check for the case of pending. If case pending is true, then we're going to return a button component here. This button is going to have a class name of with-full. The variant for this is going to say secondary, and then the disabled state is going to be true, and then the text is going to say application in progress, and then you can have a semicolon. Next, we want to check for the case of accepted. So if case accepted is true, then we want to return a link with an href going into a dynamic value here. So /dashboard /messages and then question mark application, and then passing the application._id once again, just to link you into the messages page. Inside the link, we're going to have a button with a class name of with-full, and then now it's going to have bg green instead of bg orange, so bg green 500, and then on hover bg green 600 because it has been accepted. And then the text is going to say message owner, just like that. And then you can close this out with a semicolon. And then for the case of rejected, we want to go ahead and return a button. So this button is going to have a class name of with-full, and then it's going to have a variant of destructive, and then it is going to be disabled. And then inside this button, we're just simply going to say application rejected. Let's make this capitalized. And then finally, we're going to have our default case. So for the default case, we're simply going to return the button that says start adoption process, which is this one right here. So you can simply copy it and then paste it here, and that should be okay. Now we can begin to build out our return. So we're going to return a div with a class name of padding all round of 6, so padding all round of 6. And then inside this div, we're going to have another div with a class name of margin bottom of 6. And then within this, we're going to have a button with a variant of ghost. And then when you click on this button, we're going to be calling, we're going to have an inline function here where we're going to call router.back to go back to the previous page. And then the class name for this is going to say margin bottom of 4. And then within this button, we're going to be showing the arrow left icon. So enter to auto import it. And let me confirm that I imported the button as well. Okay. So the arrow left is going to have a class name of margin right of 2 and then size of 4. And then close it out. And then the text is simply going to say back. And then we're going to go below this button and then below the first div. And we're going to create another div with a class name of grid and grid column-1. So grid columns-1 with a gap of 8, and then on large screens grid columns-2. And sorry, this should not be 2, this should be 3 because of what we're building inside. And then here what we're going to have is pet images. So that is what we are building inside this what's it called, the grid. And then we're going to have another div with a class name of large screens column span -2, which means we're going to have 3 grids by default, so 1, 2, and 3. But then on large screens, we want the images to take up 2 of those grids by default. So that's what we're having inside here. So we're going to have a card, and then we're going to have card content, and then inside card content we need to auto import it, by the way. So auto import them. Inside card content, we're going to have a div with a class name of relative, and then aspect dash video, so that it takes up 16 by 9, and then overflow dash hidden, and then rounded dash large, and bg dash gray dash 100. And then within this, we want to check for pet.images, and pet.images.length is greater than 0, and if there is no image error. So we are checking for those 3 conditions. If it is true, then we want to return something, and then if it is false, we're going to return something as well. So let's start with the true statement first of all. Here we're going to have an image, and let's make this self-closing. I like it better that way. The image for this, let's take this to the next line. The image is going to have a source of pet.images, images, and then pass in the selected image index. So selected image index. So remember that this by default is 0, meaning it selects the first image in the array of images that is provided. But then if you select another image, if you click on another image, then you want to change the index of that image, so that now it is going to update inside here and show the bigger image as the image that you click on. And then the alt attribute for this is going to say pet.name, and it's going to have a field property, and then the class name is going to say what is happening. Okay, it was reloading. Object.cover for the class name, and then on error. So if there's a problem with the image, then we're going to say set image error into true. And then for the else statement here, we're going to return a div. Let's break this down. So this div is going to have a class name of flex size dash full, and then items dash center, and then finally justify dash center. Now within this div, we're going to be showing the paw print icon. So paw print from Lucid React, control spacebar, and then enter to import it. The class name for this is going to say size dash 24 and text gray dash 300. Close it out, and let's save it so that this is formatted properly. Oops, what's happening? Okay, so save it, and then now we're going to go below this div and then below this closing parentheses, and we're going to have another div with a class name of absolute, and just confirm that we're within the div that says relative. That's correct. So class name absolute, and then top dash 4, and then right dash 4, because within this div we want to show a badge which is coming from shadcn. So not the icon, but rather the badge from components UI badge. And this is going to have a variant, and this variant is going to be dependent on the pet.is available. So if is available is true, then we want to show the default variant. Otherwise, we want to show the secondary variant. And then the class name for this is going to say bg white with an opacity of 90, and then text gray dash 900. And then within this badge, we want to check for pet.is available. And then if that is true, then the text we want to say available. Otherwise, we want to show not available. Simple as that. We can save that so that it formats properly. And then now we can go below these 2 divs, but still within the card content. And now we want to show the image thumbnails. So image thumbnails. Now, these image thumbnails are the ones that we're going to be able to click on. And we don't have this function, so we're getting this error. So let's just ignore it for now so that we can build out our UI first of all. So the image thumbnails are the ones that we're going to be able to click on so that it changes the bigger image on top right here. So for the image thumbnails, we want to check for pet.images, and we want to check for pet.images.length is greater than 0. And sorry, not greater than 0, but greater than 1, because only when there is more than 1 image, that's when we want to show the images. So when that is true, then we're going to return a div, and this div is going to have a class name of flex, and then space on the x of 2, and then overflow on the x of auto, and then padding around the 4. So overflow x of auto is just going to ensure that if the images are so many, then it's going to introduce a scroll bar. Now within this, we're going to say pet.images. Why do I keep mistyping that? .map. And then for every image that we get back, we also want to get back the index of the image because that is going to be useful to us. Now we want to return a button, not the button component, but rather just the HTML button. This is going to have a key of index. And then when you click on this, we want to go ahead and say set selected image index into the index of the button that we click on. Now the button is also going to have a class name here of a dynamic class name, so parentheses and then backticks. Let's open this up on a new line. So it's going to have a class name of size-16 and then flex-shrink-0 and then cursor-pointer and then overflow-hidden rounded -large and border-2. And then we want to check, so $ curly bracket, we want to check if the selected image index is triple equal to the index of the image that we click on. And if that is true, then we want to apply a class name called border orange -500. And if it is false, we want to apply a class called border gray -200. Simple as that. Now within this button, we're going to be showing the image component once again. This image is going to have a source of image, which we are getting from right here. And then the alt attribute is going to be dynamic. So it's going to say $pet.name. And then once again, index +1, just like that. So pet, it's going to show the name of the pet and then the number of the image. So for example, I don't know the name of the pet that we uploaded. I've just forgotten it. But it could be like Scooby-Doo 1 or Scooby-Doo 2, things like that. Now, the width for this is going to be 64, so that it shows a low resolution image, and then it also loads faster. And then the height for this is also going to be 64, and then the class name for this image is going to say size-4 and object-cover. And we can save that. And I think now let's handle this so that we can preview something on the screen. So we know that this is coming from the pets.getPetById. So let's go into convex. So into convex and then pets. And then we need to create the function to get pet by ID. And we can place it. We can place it on the bottom. So get pets by ID is going to be very simple. So export const get pet by ID. Capitalize it is equal to, this is going to be a query. And we're going to say that the arguments that it's going to require is the ID, which is coming from b.id from the pets table, not the users table. Oops. And then the handler function for this is going to be an asynchronous, taking in the context and the arguments. We're simply going to say return await context.db.get and then passing the arguments.id, just like that. And that is the entire function. So let's save that. And then let's see which other function we need. We need, oh, this is owner. I misspelled this. So owner ID. Owner ID. Okay, let's see. So owner is there. Get pet by ID, get that one. Get user by ID. Get user by ID also exists. This one also exists. And I think we should be good. So save that. Let's our application reload. So failed to construct image, that's because I have not imported it. So where is our image? Right here, you can say Control Spacebar and then make sure that you get the one from next image and then save it and then wait for this to reload. And there we go. So look at that. So we have our big image thumbnail here and then we have our little thumbnails. So when I click on this, it's going to change the image that appears on top, and that looks quite nice. So let's continue building out this page. So now we're going to go below this card. We're going to create the pet details section. So we're going to create another card with a class name of margin top of 6. Close it out. Within this, we're going to have the card header. Enter to auto import it. Make sure that you've auto imported it. And then within this, we're going to have card title with a class name of text-2xl. And then just ensure that you auto import this as well. And then within the card title, we want to say pet.name. So it's going to show the name of the pet. And then below the card title, we're going to have card description. Enter to auto import it. This is going to have a class name of text-large. And then within the card description, we want to say pet.breed read, and then ampersand mid dot again, which is something that we've done. We want to show pet dot like just like that, and then below the card header we are now going to have card content, and card content is going to have a class name of space on the y of 6, close it out, and then this is now going to show the basic information about the pet. Now remember, this is all something that we were doing in the add pet section, so that's why I'm having the comments, because it's quite a large page and you don't want to get confused within it. Now we're going to return a div with the class name of grade, and the grade columns dash 2 and a gap of 4, and then on medium screens we're going to say grade columns dash 4, and then within this we're going to return another div with the class name of flex and items dash center, and then space on the x of 2, and then within this div we're going to have a calendar icon, enter to auto import it, and then this is going to have a class name of size dash 4, and then text gray dash 500, and then close it out. And then below this calendar we're going to have a div. Within this div we're going to have a paragraph with the class name of text dash sm, and then text gray dash 500, and then the text is simply going to say age. And then below this paragraph we're going to have another paragraph with the class name of font dash medium, and then this is going to say pet.age, and then pet.age triple equals to 1 is true, then the text is going to say year, otherwise the text is going to say years. Simple as that. We can save that. Let's preview what we have on the screen, and there we go. So this is what we were building, and then we can continue. I think let's place this to the right. Our header has a problem. Oh, our header has a problem. Well, that's not good. That is not good at all. Where is our sidebar? Our sidebar is right here. So let's disable the sidebar for a moment. Yeah, let's just disable it, and then we are going to work on it, because I don't know why that is happening. I haven't changed anything, so that's weird. But let's just have it side by side, and then we can continue building this out. So we're going to go below this paragraph, and then below two divs we're going to create another div with a class name of flex and items as center, and then space on the x of 2. Within this we're going to show the weight icon. So the weight icon is going to have a class name of size dash 4, and then it's also going to have text gray dash 500, and then below this we're going to have a div which is, you know what, it is similar to this. So let's not type a lot. This is now going to say weight, and then this is now going to say pet.size, and oh, you know what, this should say size, not weight. It should say size, and then this is also going to have a class name of capitalize, and then let's save that. Let's see what we have on the screen. Oh, we need to import this, so control spacebar, enter to auto import it, and then as it is reloading, let's go ahead and copy this div one more time. Copy, paste it below, and we're going to have this is now going to show the user. Control spacebar, enter to auto import it. The class names are going to remain the same. This is now going to show the gender, and then this is going to say pet.gender, and then once again below this div which ends here we can paste it again. Now this one is going to show the map pin icon from Lucid React. This is going to say location, and then this is going to say pet.location, and then we're going to go below these three divs. We're going to have the separator from Lucid React. Did we create this, by the way? Components UI separator. Okay, so we have it. Fantastic. And then now we're going to have out the characteristics. So characteristics, and you know what, let's save it so this reloads, and then as it is reloading, let's have another div here. This div is going to have an h3 with a class name of margin bottom of 4 and font dash semi-bold. The text is going to say characteristics. Below the h3 we're going to have another div with a class name of grid and grid dash column dash 1, a gap of 4, and then on medium screens grid dash column dash 2. Within this div, we're going to have another div with the class name of flex and items center, and then space on the x of 3. And then within this, we're going to have another div with the class name of rounded, and then bg-orange-100, and then padding all round 2. There we go. And then now within this, we're going to show the activity icon. So activity from Lucid React. This is going to have a class name of size-5, and then text orange-500, and then close it out. And then we're going to go below this div. We're going to have another div with a class name, or with the paragraph inside with a class name of font-medium, and then the text is going to say activity level. Below this paragraph, we're going to have another paragraph with the class name of text-sm, and then text gray-600, and then capitalize, and then this is going to say pet.activity level, just like that. So see how it looks coming together very, very nicely. And then we're going to go below this paragraph and then below two divs. So below these two divs, and not, let's just go ahead and copy this div that has the class name of flex item center, because we are doing something that is repeating. So copy it downwards. Now this one is going to show the users plural from Lucid React, the users icon. This is going to say text blue-500. This is going to say font medium, and then the text for the paragraph is going to say good with kids. And then this is going to be checking for pet.good with kids. If that is true, it's going to say yes. Otherwise, it's going to say no. Just like that. And then once again, below this div, we're going to go ahead and paste it again. Now this one is going to show the paw print icon. Paw print. This one is going to say text pink. So text pink-500. And then this is going to say, the text is going to say, oops, good with pets. And then this one is going to say pet.good with pets. If that is true, then yes. If it is not true, then no. And then once again, below this div that ends here, paste it one more time. This one is going to show the home icon. This one is going to say text green-500. This one is going to say house trained. And then the text is going to say pet.is house trained. If that is true, then yes. If it is not true, then no. And then we can save that. And then we're going to go below these 1, 2, 3, 4 divs. We're going to have a separator component again from TsbSankara. And which component have I not imported? This one? No, import the home icon. There we go. Save that, and it should reload. Now below the separator, now we're going to have the description. So description. Now this one is going to be very simple. So it's going to be a div. Within this div, we're going to have an issue with a class name of margin bottom of 3 and font that's semi-bold. The text is going to say about, and then oops, I've pressed page up. So about pet.name. So about the name of your pet. Below this, we're going to have a paragraph with the class names leading-relaxed, and then relaxed, and then text gray-700. The text is going to say pet.description. So show the full description about that pet. And then below this div, we're now going to show the medical info about that pet. So you want to check if pet.medical info is true, and only when it exists, that's when you want to show this, because remember that medical info is an optional thing. So first of all, we're going to show the separator, and then within the separator, or rather below the separator, we're going to have a div, and then this div, we're going to have an h3 with a class name of margin bottom of 3 and flex items center and font semi-bold. And then within the h3, we're going to show the stethoscope icon. So stethoscope from Lucid React. This is going to have a class name of margin on the right of 2, size-5, and then text red-500. Below this, we're going to say medical information, just like that. And then below the h3, we're going to have a paragraph with a class name of leading-relaxed, and then text gray-700. Within this paragraph, we're going to say pet.medical info, just like that, which is going to show the medical information. And then we can go below this closing parentheses. Now we want to show the adoption fee, and remember that the adoption fee is also optional. So therefore we need to check for pet.adoption fee first of all, and only when it exists, that's when we want to show our fragment and then a separator, just like we've done above. And then below the separator, you're going to have a div. Within this div, we're going to have an h3 with a class name of margin bottom of 3 and font dash semi bold. And then the text is going to say adoption fee. And then below the h3, we want to have a paragraph with a class name of text dash 2xl and then font dash bold and then text dash orange dash 500. And then this one is now going to show the adoption fee. So $sign first of all, and then inside curly brackets pet.adoption fee. Adoption, not free fee. There we go. Now let's save that, because that is only the first part, which is basically the left part that we have built. Okay, it looks ugly without the sidebar. Let's go back to the layout. Let's enable this. And then let's wait for it to reload. Okay, there we go. So you can see that there's the about section, the characteristics, the medical information, and then the adoption fee is right there. And I've just noticed something on this part. But the background colors for these icons is wrong. So let's go ahead and fix that. So right where we have characteristics, this is BG orange, that's okay. This should now say BG blue dash 100. And then the next div is here. This should say BG pink dash 100. And then this should say BG green dash 100. Save that, and that should now apply the correct background colors, looking much better. Now, once you have built all this, then we want to build the section here that is going to appear on the right, which is the right sidebar. So we're going to go below the card and then below this div, and this div is the one that should have the first grid. Yes, because remember that this div, the div that I've built is this one with column span 2. So we want to go below this div, which is the child of this div with the class name of grid, so that we can build the second grid. So therefore, we're going to say the following. Let's have a comment here that says right sidebar. And then now we're going to create a div with a class name of space on the y of 6. And then we first want to create the call to action button. So the call to action button is going to be for the function that we created called get action button right here, which is going to show the button depending on the status of the application. So once again, right at the bottom, we're going to say that we want to have a card component. Within this card component, we're going to have card content, and then the card content is going to have a class name of padding all round of 6. And then within this, we want to say get action button, and then we want to just call that function like that. Now we can save that to see how it looks. And without loading, it should appear right here. There we go. So start adoption process is the button that appears, because we have not yet made an application for this. But when we make an application, then it's going to, show a different button. And when you click on this, it's going to take you into another page that we have not yet created. So if you click on this right now, you're going to get a 404 page. Now we're going to go below this card, and now we want to show the owner information. So owner info. And here we want to check if the owner exists and is not the owner of that pet. So basically, if the owner of the pet exists and you are not the owner of that pet, that's when we want to show the owner information. Otherwise, you already have your own information, right? So here we want to show the card component. Within the card, we want to show card header. And then within card header, we want to show card title. And then it's going to say pet owner. Oops. Pet. Why do we keep doing that? So pet owner. Below the card header, we're going to have card content with a class name of space on the y of 4. Within card content, we're going to have a div with a class name of flex and items as center, and then space on the x of 3. Within this, we're going to have the avatar component. So from components UI avatar, the class name is going to say size-12, close it out. Within the avatar, we're going to have the avatar image, avatar image coming from components UI avatar. The source for this is going to say owner.profile image, and then close it out. And then the avatar fallback from components UI avatar. This is going to say, this is self-closing. Oh, sorry, not self-closing, but when close it out, this is going to show the user icon with a class name of size-6, and then close it out. Now, below the avatar, we're going to have a div. Below this div, we're going to have a paragraph with the class name of font-medium, and the text is going to say owner.name. And then below this paragraph, we're going to have another paragraph with the class name of text-sm, which is going to say owner.location. So let's go ahead and save that so that we can preview what you have on the screen. And you know what? It's taking a while for it to reload on my end, and actually there it goes. So showing the details about the owner. And remember that I logged in with another account, that's why we can see this. So if you're not able to see this, then you can try to switch to another account. Now below these two divs, we want to check for the owner.bio. If the owner.bio exists, and only when it exists, that's when we want to show a paragraph, the class name of text-sm and text gray-700, which is going to say owner.bio, just like that. And then once again, below this, we're going to have a div with a class name of space on the y of 2. Within this, we want to show owner.email, and when owner.email exists, we want to show a div with a class name of flex and items-center, and then space, so center, space on the x of 2, and then text-sm and text gray-600. Close it out. Within this, okay, it's not closing, so close it manually. Now within this div, we want to show the mail icon, so Ctrl spacebar and then enter from Lucid React. This is going to have a class name of size-4. Close it out. Below this, we're going to have a span, and this span is going to show the owner.email, not .mail. And then once again, we're going to go ahead and let's copy this entire thing from here. Copy, paste it downwards. This is now going to say Ctrl D to highlight both of them. Now this is going to say owner.phone. The icon here is now going to show the phone icon. So Ctrl spacebar, enter to auto import it from Lucid React. And then now we're going to go below this and then below this div, but still within the card content. And we're going to show the link component with an href that is dynamic, going into /dashboard /users $owner._id. So this is a page that we have not yet built, because this is the profile page for the owners. So technically it is going to look similar to the profile page that we built, but we also need to create it. And then now within this link, we're going to show the button component from TsbSankara. This is going to have a variant of outline. And then the class name for this is going to say with-full, just like that. And then the text is going to say view profile, and looks very, very nice. So you can save that. Let's see what you have in the screen. And then as it is reloading, actually, let's just continue building it out because we're going to see it. Now, next, we're going to say we want to show the application status. So below this, we want to check if application is true, and only when the application is true. And remember that this is coming from TsbSankara, not TsbSankara, sorry, but Convex. So we're getting the application right here, get application by pet and applicant. So we are checking for the application, and only when the application is true, that's when we want to show the card, and then we want to show card header. Oops. So card header, and then card title, and then the title is going to say application status. And then below the card header, we want to show card content. So card content is going to have a div with a class name of flex and items-center, and then space on the x of 2. Within this, we want to check if the application.status is equal to pending. So if the application status is pending, only when that is true, that's when we want to return a React fragment here. And then we want to return a div with a class name of size-3 and animate-pulse and rounded-full and pg yellow-500. And this should be a self-closing div. So let's make it, oops, okay, don't do that. I mean, it's okay even as it is like that. Let me make this full screen so that you can see. We're going to go now below this div. We're going to have a span with a class name of text yellow-700, and the text is going to say pending review, just like that. And then let's go ahead and copy this because we want to do something similar. So below this, we can check for the status of accepted, and you already know that accepted is going to have green. So just highlight the yellow here and then Control D to highlight the second one, change this to green, and then the text now is going to say accepted. And you know what, I'm even doing something wrong. We're not going to have a div here. Instead, we're going to have the check icon from Lucid React. This is going to have a class name of size-4 and then text green-500, and then close it out, and that looks okay. And then once again, we can copy this, paste it below. This is now checking for rejected, and it's going to show the X icon. So X from Lucid React. This is now going to say text red-500. The span is going to say text red-700, and then the text is going to say rejected, just like that. And then we can go below this div. Below this div, we're going to have a paragraph with the class name of margin top of 2, and then text-sm and text gray-600, and then the text is going to say applied on, and then we're going to pass in new date and then pass in the application dot created at, because that is something that we are getting from our database, dot to local date string, like so. So it's going to format the date in a way that is readable for us. So let's save that, and that should be the entire page complete. And now, just to mention, you are not going to be able to see this last part that we've created because we have not yet made an application. So if we make an application, that's when this card rather is going to appear on the bottom. Now, therefore, the next page that we need to build is the adoption page. So you can simply click on this, which is going to take us into the /adopt page. The path is going to be similar, but it's going to append /adopt right there, as you can see, and we get a 404 page. And how do we fix that? Well, we simply go into this unique ID, or rather the dynamic page that we have. We're going to right click, create a new file called adopt/page.jsx, which is going to create the folder and then the file. Now, once again, just take note that the adopt page is within the dynamic page. So if you don't have it as that, then this route is not going to work, and you're going to have to reformat a bit. So inside here, just so that you don't get anything, let's first of all mark this file as use client. I can't speak, and I can't speak because I had a tooth removed, so I'm having trouble. Now let's say export default function adopt page, and then let's just return a div here that says adopt page. We can save that, and it should reload, and we're going to have that on the screen. And there we go. So we're going to begin working on this page in the next video.